Enter this moment with reverence. The eternal is nearer than our breath. You have been surrounded by something exceptional, chosen one, and the effects are still being felt in the halls of consciousness, where truth is found. Ordinary souls buckle under the weight of planned turmoil, and most individuals crumble under pressure. But you have done something that has left observers in complete awe. Even you may not have fully understood your nature until now, but the way you handled what can only be defined as a concerted attack on your fundamental essence has shown you something about yourself. They brought everything they had to go after you. Fear is a weapon used by a number of factors working together to destroy your foundation and watch you crumble into the remains of who you used to be. This wasn't a haphazard argument or miscommunication that got out of hand. This was done with ruthlessness, calculation, and purpose. After analyzing your habits and determining your perceived weaknesses, they started an assault intended to cause such a great deal of confusion that your life would be reduced to unrecognizable rubble. Here's what they essentially misinterpreted about people who were chosen like you. They overlooked the fact that your power is not derived from external pressures, as they were formulating plans to eliminate you. The lack of conflict or other people's approval does not determine your authority. They were totally unprepared for what happened next, since they had never seen anything like what they saw when they attempted to drag you down in their experience with regular people. Their first round of attack was intended to incite panic, to cause you to react out of fear and desperation. To anybody who would listen, they wanted you to fumble and defend, explain, and justify your existence. They expected you to retaliate by following their guidelines, their tactics, and their state of awareness, in order to match their energy and demonstrate their belief that everyone eventually displays their ugly nature when pushed hard enough. They anticipated you to fall into the same destructive patterns from which they function. They had an extremely personal and advanced arsenal. They turned your confidences into weapons for character assassination by using the secrets you had divulged when you were weak. These attacks by strangers weren't arbitrary. These were deliberate betrayals by people who had access to your inner world and decided to take advantage of that sacred trust. They knew just which vulnerabilities to surgically target, which worries to exacerbate, and which pressure points would inflict the greatest harm. They planned a campaign that was intended to completely flip the narrative, portraying you as the aggressor and themselves as the victims. They created intricate tales in which your generosity turned into deceit, your boundaries into brutality, and your success into stealing from more worthy people. This was no casual slander or rumor. This was advanced psychological warfare designed to radically alter the narrative of your identity in the eyes of everyone who knows you. Beloved, I sense you're standing at the edge of a fresh breakthrough, because you've kept the faith. New favor is aligning with your steps. When you act in faith, you step into flow. When you release what's in your hand, God releases what's in His. If this word strengthens you, would you sow a seed today? $20, $50, or more, by tapping the YouTube Super Thanks button. Give freely, give cheerfully, and give with expectation. As you sow, believe for doors to open, wisdom to increase, and provision to meet you right on time. Scripture anchors this promise. Test me in this, see if I will not open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing. Malachi 3 verse 10. That word connects your generosity to God's generosity. Your obedience sets the table, and His overflow fills it. So take that bold step. $20, $50, or any amount, through Super Thanks. I'm agreeing with you for increase, peace in your home, and favor that surrounds you like a shield. In Jesus' name, amen. Their tactic was especially sneaky because they took advantage of your already sympathetic disposition. They were aware of your natural tendency to attempt to see things from their point of view, to consider the possibility that you may have unintentionally hurt them, and to show grace even to those who are deliberately trying to damage you. They relied on your empathy turning into a weapon in their hands, and your readiness to accept blame turning into proof of guilt in their perverted story. As an alternative, something extraordinary occurred that still has an impact on everyone who saw it. To those watching, you displayed a level of poise that was almost otherworldly. You remained centered despite the storms raging all around you, the accusations flying, and the stories being distorted beyond recognition. This spoke to something much more profound than simple self-control. It wasn't you clenching your jaw and trying to keep your cool. This allowed you to tap into a source of genuine power that is immune to outside influence. You made a decision that would shape everything that came after, during those crucial times when it felt like everything was collapsing, when the noise was overwhelming, and the pressure was too much to bear. You went within rather to face the battlefield they had set up for you. As they raged, planned, and conspired to destroy you, you took refuge in the furthest recesses of your own mind and rekindled that unquenchable fire that no storm outside can put out. This introspection was neither a defeat nor a retreat. You could not have made a more potent strategic move. You discovered the answers they were attempting to keep you from finding in the quiet of your own self. You even shocked yourself by finding reserves of strength, drawing from a reservoir of knowledge that had been waiting at this precise moment to become apparent. As they pressed harder, you sank deeper and deeper until you hit bedrock, that solid base of divine love that is the essence of every chosen person. By harmonizing with cosmic currents that function outside their comprehension of power and influence, you were really attracting spiritual forces that they were unable to even detect, which they mistook for withdrawal. You were constructing interior defenses that would be totally impervious to their attacks, while they were devoting themselves to outward fights. Everyone watching could see your actual nature more plainly the more pressure they put on you. You appeared to get more rooted, more in line, and more connected to something that was unbreakable within you, while they became more frantic and insane in their attempts to elicit a response. In the face of coordinated darkness, those who anticipated seeing you crumble under duress saw what happens when a chosen one truly embodies their spiritual authority. It was impossible to overlook the contrast. With every failed attempt to shatter you, their energy became more chaotic and destructive, while your presence became more tranquil and bright. Patterns emerged that helped observers understand the actual nature of the situation. They observed how your accusers' accounts were constantly shifting, how their proof was inconsistent, and how their emotional outbursts were out of proportion to the complaints they made. In the meantime, you continued to be dependable, the same person in public as in private, with the same principles demonstrated by deeds as by words. The witnesses were profoundly awoken by this striking variation in energy signatures. Individuals who had never thought of themselves as spiritual started to realize that they were seeing a conflict between essentially disparate awareness operating systems. Yellow heart if you're moved by divine love. Now is the moment to share it. Click the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contribute $50 or more to help us broadcast God's blessings far and wide. Every act of generosity you make is being watched in heaven and will return to you 100-fold. Those motivated by ego, fear, and the urge to manipulate outside events in order to feel safe were on one side. On the opposite side was a person who had found solace in something much more dependable. Their link to spiritual truth, which is outside the realm of human control. The keenest onlookers saw that they were watching a spiritual resilience masterclass. You weren't weak if you didn't combat fire with fire. It was proof of gaining access to a whole new form of power. You showed what abundant awareness looks like when it's truly embodied rather than only grasped intellectually, whereas your assailants were acting from scarcity consciousness, constantly needing to denigrate others in order to feel better themselves. They were all surprised by what happened next. However, it adhered to the exact spiritual physics principles that control the flow of energy through consciousness. Every assault they made, every effort to obscure your light, every tactic intended to ruin your connections and reputation started to show their own shadows more clearly. As their masks fell off and their genuine objectives became apparent, the very people who had gathered to watch your alleged downfall turned into close watchers of their own character assassination. This campaign's planners had made a crucial error in their understanding of the nature of spiritual energy. They thought that anyone might be overcome by negative force supplied with sufficient coordination and intensity, that even the strongest person would crumble if enough pressure was applied to the correct places. Instead, they found that attacks do not weaken those who work from real spiritual connection. They establish a purifying procedure that exposes the unbreakable core underneath and burns away anything that isn't real. As their campaign grew more intense, an intriguing development emerged that went against their conception of the nature of power. Each falsehood they told about you seems to shed light on how they relate to the truth. Each attempt at manipulation revealed more about their own nature. Each act of brutality they committed revealed the lack of true strength inside their own base. There was no denying the spiritual mathematics. Light triumphs over darkness. It can only become more apparent when contrasted with its opposite. Those who had first been unbiased observers were appalled by their growing desperation. People observed in real time as people who had before appeared rational and trustworthy started to display actions that exposed a very unsettling aspect of their actual character. There was no slow slipping of the mask. Witnessing it was spectacular, indisputable, and quite unnerving. Those who had been brought in to see your destruction began to whisper. These individuals, who were first enlisted to support their story about your alleged shortcomings, started to see trends that revealed an entirely different picture. They observed your accusers' increasing instability, desperation, and willingness to use more harmful tactics after their initial approaches did not provide the expected outcomes. What they saw was the full disclosure of the darkness that had been planning this entire operation, not the exposing of your concealed darkness. Something significant changed in everyone's comprehension of these dynamics as the days stretched into weeks and the attacks persisted. Your persistent refusal to interact with them on an equal footing. Your steadfast dedication to acting honorably in spite of the repercussions. It became impossible to overlook the strong contrast established by your apparent unwillingness to get drawn into their dramatic narratives. The distinction between those acting authentically and those engaging in complex manipulations became very clear to everyone. Witnesses gradually but irrevocably began to awaken. Your accusers' early supporters started to see contradictions in their accounts. The way specifics varied based on the target audience. How strategic emotional appeals were used instead of coming from real grief. In the meantime, your story didn't change. Not because you were meticulously manipulating a story, but because truth doesn't need to be maintained as much as deception does. A pivotal moment occurred when a number of people who had been brought in to support the campaign against you started to share their personal insights. You weren't being defended by these people. These were individuals who had at first accepted the charges, but had become uneasy with what they were seeing. They had no apparent reason to protect you. Therefore, their testimony was especially credible. All they were doing was reacting to their own conscience and their own visual evidence. These courageous individuals started talking about the coercion they had experienced to join the campaign, the deception employed to get their assistance, and the assurances your accusers had given and subsequently betrayed. As more people had the guts to come forward with their own stories of being coerced, or recruited to join the attempt to destroy you, their revelations had a cascading effect. The exact network that had been put together to bring you down turned out to be the truth-seeking tool that revealed the whole thing. There was no denying the spiritual mathematics of this scenario. It felt like every bit of bad energy they threw at you got amplified and came back to them with compound interest. Their own poisonous decisions started to cause their relationships, reputations, and sense of self to fall apart. What they intended as your public execution turned into their own exposure as people prepared to compromise compassion, truth, and fundamental human decency in order to further their own egos and covert agendas. What happened to them wasn't the most amazing part of the whole trip, though. It was what transpired within of you during this period of severe spiritual trial. You were exploring your own consciousness and finding stores of power and wisdom that even shocked you, while they were wasting their energy in fruitless attempts to shatter your spirit. Every assault turned into a call to deepen your connection to your inner power. Let go of your reliance on approval from others, and develop the kind of unwavering presence that is indicative of spiritual maturity. You discovered abilities that had been dormant, awaiting the ideal circumstances. Throughout this testing phase, your spiritual abilities grew rapidly under hardship, much like a muscle that gets stronger when it is strained. Your ability to discern the underlying motives of every word and deed sharpened your intuition. You were able to control your emotions to an almost superhuman degree for those who saw. You showed expertise that usually takes centuries to develop, the ability to contain chaos without being overwhelmed by it. It wasn't merely an internal change. Everyone in your sphere of influence was impacted by the ways it spread outward. Dove brothers and sisters, everything done in faith multiplies in God's abundance. Use the Super Thanks feature to donate $100 today and join this sacred mission. When your roots are grounded in Him, your fruit will flourish, and your offering becomes a seed that bears blessed harvests. People started to gravitate toward your vibe because they were in dire need of something they couldn't quite put into words. Others said it gave them exceptional clarity about their own life circumstances, while others said it made them feel safer in your company. The stabilizing force of someone who has found their center in the middle of complete pandemonium was what they were experiencing. During this trial, your everyday life evolved into a kind of spiritual practice that would have tested the mettle of even the most seasoned seekers. You had to choose patience over response, truth over convenience, and love over fear in every encounter. Every discussion turned into a chance to show what happens when someone acts according to heavenly principles instead of their own ego. These innumerable little decisions added together to create an indestructible spiritual character that now acts as a lighthouse for others battling their own inner demons. Your attackers didn't realize that they were helping you graduate spiritually into a higher state of consciousness by applying such tremendous pressure. Anything within of you that wasn't truly in line with your highest self was burned away by every effort to dim your light. Their attack turned into your spiritual accelerator, condensing what could have been years of steady development into a period of intense, quick change. Take a moment to think about that. I have a very important matter that requires your attention. Through this weekly Zoom call, we're sharing all we know about personal power, healing oneself, and healing others. No holding back, no filters. All of the occult secrets we have accumulated during actual years of spiritual practice have been subtly added. Those who are willing to follow the same route can now access the methods and knowledge that helped us go from controlled porn to conscious artists. The person who went through this experience was not the same person who came out of it. Ironically, though, you became more of who you were than you had ever been. Every effort to denigrate, you seemed to unveil new facets of your personality that truly enlightened onlookers about the potential of people when they are in harmony with their best selves. Your quiet was not that of someone who had been battered into submission. It was the quiet of someone who understood that confronting toxins head-on would mean compromising all of your values. Your refusal to use traditional means of self-defense revealed a great deal about your relationship with truth and your faith in the supreme justice that rules spiritual reality. You were clearly functioning from a completely different paradigm of awareness because of your degree of faith in cosmic order and your readiness to let truth come to light via your example rather than your arguments. No amount of verbal defense could have done what this calculated quiet did. Your accusers felt obliged to fill the void it left by acting in a more open and desperate manner. Without your responses to divert attention from their own behavior, everyone's attention was drawn to their actual character. Your inaction produced a void that turned into a mirror reflecting their techniques, objectives, and character with crystal clarity. People started to realize that you weren't being passive by being silent. The most proactive decision you could have made was that one. Your determination to just be yourself and not need validation from others was revolutionary in a world where everyone feels the need to defend, explain, and justify every action. This revealed a degree of spiritual assurance that most people have never experienced, much less lived out. Your silence had a powerful effect on every relationship and circumstance it touched. Suddenly, many who had been enmeshed in the drama began to wonder why they felt compelled to choose a side and why they were so involved in other people's problems. People started to realize how much of their own energy they had been unwittingly sacrificing to pointless conflicts and skirmishes after you set an example of non-engagement. Your quiet started to speak more than words as the weeks went by. It conveyed inner tranquility, strength, knowledge, and an unwavering devotion to truth that didn't require confirmation from others. People began to recognize that they were surrounded by someone who had found something that most people look for their entire lives: the capacity to stay grounded in their own truth in the face of chaos outside. Everyone involved could see the full extent of what had happened as the dust settled. After seeing firsthand the difference between someone acting from genuine spiritual power and someone motivated by ego-based machinations, people who had come expecting to see you fail instead became your most ardent supporters. Your former assailants were left alone, their credibility ruined by their own decisions, and their strategies failed so badly that they were subjected to the same social and personal devastation they had planned for you. Because they were formed in the furnace of mutual truth and character recognition, the relationships that made it through this testing were immensely stronger. New relationships were made with people who had seen your poise under duress and saw in you something they wished to have more of in their own life. People were drawn to your energy because you had shown them what it looked like to stay connected to love despite being surrounded by its antithesis, not because you had proven yourself in combat. Those who had been nearest to the attack's epicenter, however, underwent arguably the most striking change. A deep disillusionment that radically changed their perception of human nature overcame those who had observed both the public campaign and the private planning that went into it. Some had been your accusers' true friends, thinking they were standing by someone who had been harmed. Others had been enlisted by appealing to their sense of justice or concern for the defense of the weak. These people experienced severe and long-lasting shock when they realized the real nature of what they had been taking part in. Someone else had unintentionally used them as weapons. Their noble intentions were used to support falsehoods. Being duped was only one aspect of the betrayal they experienced. It was about being forced to participate in something that went against their own morals and principles. These reawakened allies turned into some of your fiercest guardians. They had to defend the truth after being coerced into endorsing lies for their own healing, not because you asked them to. Their fervent support held special weight, as it came from individuals who had witnessed both sides, were familiar with the inside tricks of manipulation, and could authoritatively discuss the distinctions between your character and that of your accusers. Your assailants could not have predicted the phenomenon they generated as they changed from unconscious players to conscious champions. They had unintentionally brought together a group of people who had first-hand knowledge of separating truth from propaganda, rather than assembling a mob to kill you. This society developed into a strong force for justice that functioned with a moral authority that can only be attained by being put to the test and proven in the furnace of tough decisions. This crucible produced a version of yourself that functions with such profound spiritual assurance that circumstances no longer have the ability to dictate your reality. Your pre-existing worries have been transformed into wisdom as a result of this encounter. An unwavering sense of your own value that doesn't need outside validation has replaced the need for approval that might have left you open to manipulation. Glowing star yearning to witness God's miracles firsthand? Plant your spiritual seed now by contributing $100 or more through the YouTube Super Thanks button. Your offering lights the path for others and echoes through His divine plan, bringing His light into every step you take. This change was more than just a personal one. You were getting ready for something far bigger. The fortitude you acquired during this ordeal, the understanding of human nature you acquired, and the unwavering trust you fostered in divine justice. These were not merely gifts for your personal path. They were training you to be a beacon of hope for those who would encounter similar difficulties, to be evidence that love can endure in the face of hatred, that peace can exist in the midst of chaos, and that truth can prevail in a world full of lies. People started to realize that your story was about more than just overcoming personal hardship. When human consciousness is at its peak, you have become a live example of what it can do. Anyone going through their own spiritual difficulties and tribulations can use your trek through this darkness and your eventual emergence as a beacon of light. The repercussions went much beyond your immediate social group. Stories about how you handled this scenario started to circulate, encouraging others to reflect on how they respond to conflict and what it could look like to act with the same integrity in the face of difficulties. Your example served as a benchmark for what may happen when someone prioritizes long-term character above fleeting gains and spiritual values over short-term advantages, something that had lain dormant in the collective consciousness of all those who saw your metamorphosis was awakened. People started to reflect on their purpose for being here, their desired impact, and their desired legacy. Others were reminded of their own divine nature and their ability to act from love rather than fear, truth rather than convenience, and wisdom rather than reactivity by your display of unwavering spiritual power. You might never completely understand how your handling of this circumstance continues to have an impact on lives and change perceptions. Those who witnessed your journey through this darkness have been motivated to reflect on how they handle conflict and what it could be like to act with the same integrity when confronted with their own difficulties. Your example has come to symbolize what may happen when someone chooses truth over expediency, love over fear, and spiritual values over short-term gain. Unknowingly, the people who planned this campaign against you gave you the precise training your soul required to advance to the next stage of spiritual mastery. You were laying the inner foundations that will last the rest of your life, while others were burning their bridges and ruining their own reputation. The fortitude you found in this adversity, the understanding you acquired of your own nature, and the unwavering adherence to divine protection you now possess. No outside power can ever take away these gifts from you. You are a symbol of hope for anybody who has ever faced overwhelming odds, standing here now in the wake of what was meant to be your demise. Fighting fire with fire or demonstrating your superiority over your opponents did not bring you success. You prevailed because you stayed so firmly grounded in your true self that nothing outside of you could pull you away. And in doing so, you exposed the helplessness of those who rely on control and manipulation. Under duress, the chosen ones among us exhibit a particular periodicity, and during this study, they saw that frequency working at full capacity in you. Your unwavering determination, your ability to turn poison into medicine, and your indomitable spirit all serve as indicators that you are here to show what human consciousness is capable of when it is at its best. Everyone who witnessed you handle the situation so gracefully now has a broader perspective on what is possible when they confront their own inner demons. An attack on your reputation and character is not something you simply survived. You demonstrated to the audience what happens when a chosen person acts from the unwavering basis of divine love and fully embraces their spiritual authority. The silence that once shielded you has changed into a voice that speaks truth through your very presence, encouraging others to find their own inner strength and serving as a reminder that no outside force can weaken a soul that is aware of its own divine nature, no matter what storms may rage around them. The world is changed in this way by those who are chosen, by possessing such genuine spiritual force that everyone who encounters them is elevated by the experience, rather than by extravagant gestures or public campaigns. The cosmos changed from what they intended to be evil to your greatest growth-promoting agent. And now you are a living example of how love always wins out over fear when someone has the guts to fully embody it, regardless of the immediate cost.